This is Timothy Albrino.
Hey, this is Trey Smith.
My name is Elliot Marzulli.
This is Dr. Judd Burke.
This is Ryan Peterson.
If you want to know your Bible, you have to dig, and you're in the right place. This is the Dig Bible Podcast.
What is going on, all my local guys and gals and long distance pals?
We're back.
We're back.
That's the best I got.
Nailed it. Now we are back, and we're actually going to do something a little different this go around, ain't we, Steve-O?
Yeah, it's a bit different, but I think it's very pertinent, especially with the Enoch study that we've been going through. So
yeah. So this is not going to be a typical run-of-the-mill show that we do. So this is kind of spur of the moment, off the seat of our pants kind of show. But I was actually on my lunch break. Was it yesterday? Yesterday on lunch break, and here I am. I went to Burger King for something quick to eat, and the line was long. I went inside, and I love being from the South. Rabbit trail for you. I get my food. I sit down. They have a TV inside, and you know what's playing on TV? Andy Griffith's show. The whole do, and I'm like, yeah, take me back to my childhood. But I'm sitting there, and then I get this text from Steve, and he's like, check out this article, and totally was not expecting it. I mean, I knew stuff like this was going on, but it's like this. Here it is. It's like boom. Kind of tell me about this article that you had found, Steve.
So, and it's kind of funny, and you know how no matter what anybody thinks out there, your phone is listening to you, because it's all the stuff that we look into, different research and things. It pops up based on your search history, all the different things that trend that you look at. But this article that popped up, and it is, I'm trying to see who actually, I mean, it's an online article. Who actually published this article?
There's several of them out, I'm sure.
Gizmodo or something is what it says at the top of the article. It says a Montana man pleads guilty to creating massive Franken-Sheep with cloned animal parts. That's the title of the article, and that sounds crazy. It sounds out there. But it says an 80-year-old man in Montana pleaded guilty Tuesday to 2 felony wildlife crimes involving his plan to let paying customers hunt sheep on private ranches. But these weren't just any old sheep. They were massive hybrid sheep created by illegally importing animal parts from Central Asia, cloning the sheep, and then breeding an enormous hybrid species. That, it says, Arthur Jack Sothbarth, who is 80 years old, owns and operates the 215-acre alternate livestock ranch in Vaughan, Montana. So I want to know how this 80-year-old guy is cloning sheep. Like, how does this guy in Montana have like the Jurassic Park lab in his back room, like where he's.
This is exactly what I told my boss. When I told him about it, I'm like, you cannot tell me that there is not a Jurassic Park somewhere and there's a T-Rex just waiting to get out and devour us all.
If you got this 80-year-old guy that's cloning sheep in his basement, I mean, and I mean, this is, once again, this article.
Freaking rancher. You can imagine what our government's doing, or somebody that actually knows what they're doing. But before we get into discussion, I actually just have this, not that exact article, but I have one pulled up here on my other screen that I'm going to show you guys, the viewer, and scroll through this thing and read this out for you and show you some of these pictures. Like I said, this is not the exact one Steve had and is quoted, but this is the one that we got for you to see here. But this website is notthebee.com that I had found this on. But the headline right here, as you can see, says 80-year-old Montana man pleads guilty to using cloning to make giant mutant bighorns. And as you can see, right here's a picture. And there's this guy holding it, he just killed this thing. You can see the blood and stuff coming out of its nose. This thing is huge. I mean, this thing is just, I'll say it again, it's huge. It's even described as a giant mutant. But if you go down, it says Arthur, quote in quotations, Jack Schubert of Vaughn, Montana, pled guilty to federal charges of violating the Lacey Act, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. Schubert ran Schubert Ranch, an alternative livestock ranch in Montana. I'd say alternative. Uh, the primary customers for the ranch were big game hunters on captive hunting operations, also known as shooting preserves or game ranches. So basically, people, rich people that are trophy hunters, pay this guy money and come where he has this Jurassic Park style ranch just stocked with these monstrosities for you to go and hunt and kill and put on your wall. But it says, continuing on, it says, but you know how these things go. Everyone wants to bag the biggest, baddest prize. So Schubert figured since we're living in the age of DNA manipulation, he could make something worthy to hunt and sell, and the hunting preserves around the nation. Little did he think about the ramifications. Now, this is, kind of funny here, but you see this little video clip. There's this like chimeric looking goat with 8 eyes and one, two, three, four sets of horns here. It says, this next bit is the stuff of pure science fiction comes to life. It says Schubert's brought pairs of the largest sheep in the world, Marco Polo Argali sheep. I guess the scientific name is Ovis amon Pali, from Kazakhstan into the United States without declaring the importation. Average males can weigh more than 300 pounds, with horns that span more than 5 feet. Schubert sent genetic material from the Argali parts to a lab to create cloned embryos. Schubert then implanted the embryos in Oz of his ranch, resulting in a single pure genetic male, Marco Polo Argali, that he named Montana Mountain King, or MMK. Court documents explain that Schubert worked with the other unarmed co-conspirators to use MMK's semen to artificially impregnate various other species of Oz, all, uh, all of which were prohibited in Montana and created hybrid animals. I mean, this is pretty wild. It says Katie Cheeseborough, executive director of Wyoming Sheep Foundation, said they, Marco Polo sheep, have really cool spiraling horns beyond the full curl of the bighorn sheep native to North America. With that said, they are also a vastly different species from Wyoming's native bighorn sheep, she said. Although the physical outcome of hybridizing an Argali and Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep creates a sense of curiosity, it's not a good idea.
It's crazy to me to see that. I mean, it's
scary.
Yeah. You think about this, and I mean, we can go back all the way in our study on Enoch that we've talked about, and we talk about they sinned with, birds and beasts and reptiles and all these things. And, you could think about that a couple different ways, which we kind of talk about going through there. But if whatever which way you want to talk about it, it's still genetic manipulation. You're playing God. You're playing God. And anything that wasn't created by God, anything that we do on our own is going to be some kind of abomination. You know what I mean? In this regard, there is a 300-pound sheep with 5-foot wide horns. That's just insane. I've seen bighorn sheep. I've seen them in person. They don't get to 300 pounds. I've seen them.
No, I mean, you can look at this picture right here. I mean, this thing is massive. I mean, it's like a bull. I mean, seriously. I mean, it is a sheep slash ram the size of a bull. And what's scary to me is, just like you talked about, we talk all the time about, the book of Enoch and how it says, they sinned against the beasts of the field and the birds of the air. Well, how do you do that? Well, by genetic modification. And you have all these ancient stories about these chimeric creatures, these centaurs, and these, half bull, half man.
Minotaurs.
Yeah, and just all these different things, these bird headed men. And we think, oh, it's just,
Satyrs.
yeah, it's
And you
just
can go down.
stories, it's myth, or it's people tripping off of mushroom soup or ayahuasca, and people are depicting their dreams. This is stuff that's obviously capable. They're capable of doing this. And if some, like we talked about, if this is some 80, this 80-year-old guy might be intelligent man. So please don't think this is just a blanket term, but I'm using. But if some 80-year-old dumb farmer in Montana can do this, imagine what your government or a well-educated doctor or scientist can, and I'll just go ahead and say it, is doing.
And this is where we go back and you can look at a lot of movies. Go back to, and I'll start with something like Terminator, right? We talk about Skynet and AI and all this stuff seems so far-fetched, but look where we are right now today. Look at what AI is doing and how AI is expanding and getting bigger. We go back to the mid 90s with Jurassic Park, right? When that movie came out, to me, that was the coolest movie that had ever been on TV. It just blew me away because it looked so real. You starting to look at, they're talking about in the next couple of years that they're going to be able to clone. I think it's either this year or next year, they're going to start cloning woolly mammoths. But what they're doing is they don't have the full sequence of DNA. So they're taking, it's either the African elephant or the Indian elephant, and they're actually taking those segments, just like in Jurassic Park, where they took the reptile or I think it was frog DNA, amphibian DNA, that to link the different parts of the genetic chain, the genetic code. So then you get some kind of abomination. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before, and this is my personal opinion. This isn't, biblical or anything of that nature. But when we say that, think about dinosaurs, think about some of the some of the theropods or some of the meat eating dinosaurs, the carnivores that you see that were the bigger species. You have the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which everybody knows is pretty common, but that people know of, but there's still, I think there was only 7 or 8 complete skeletons that ever been found ever. But we have the Allosaurus, which was a little bit smaller version of that a lot of people know about. But it's more common. We found more of these things, and you sit there and you see the depiction of what one of these would look like. If you've been to a museum, you've seen this skeleton, seen what that looks like. To me, if you look at a T-Rex, I don't see him sitting in the Garden of Eden eating apples. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. I firmly believe that this is a result of those watchers and that genetic manipulation. And that's what happens when you incorporate and you try to take on being God. You bring more sin into the world and bad things happen. And I think that those things are the result of sin. I truly do. But who's to say? Once again, that's my opinion.
Well,
That's
they get
my
out of the cage, they chase the car, they flip it, and then they eat the man that's just innocently taking a dump in the outhouse.
it's because
I've
he had
seen
an
it
apple
100
in his
times.
hand.
I've seen it a
He
100
had an
times.
apple in his hand. No, I know. It just, but you see that, and even in those movies and things, of course, it wouldn't be a entertainment without the, the drama that comes along with it. But in those movies, nothing ends well. Anytime you see something like that, nothing ends well. And when we look at anytime we change God's creation or we try to manipulate it to make it better, we do this genetic. You could start going down the line of transhumanism, right? And starting, okay, we could say that, well, we could replace this part on your body because we can genetically clone or make this or grow a pancreas in a baboon or so. Who knows?
Yeah. A
You can do
human
these
ear on
different
the back of
things.
a mouse. I've seen that.
Yes. So you see these things where you see that that playing God, and it gets really scary. It's a very slippery slope because I'll be the first to admit I'm not. I think you should go to the doctor. If you're sick, you can go to the doctor. The doctor's great. God gave us intelligence. He gave us the positive side of that pharmakia, that the knowledge and the ability to be able to, I got a headache, I can take some ibuprofen. God's given us knowledge
The
and
glasses
the
on your
ability to
head.
learn these things. The glasses that I have on my head.
It's
This
all
is
about
not
intent.
witchcraft. It's intent. But if you take it to that next level and you put that negative spin on it, the things that come out of that are never good. I mean, they just are never good. But
My name's Nick. I'm the owner of Kevlar Joe's, and I'm the roaster. I'm an Air Force Security Forces veteran, a dad to 3 wild boys, and a husband to my wife, Crystal, and a coffee enthusiast. From a family in a small town in Missouri, we started with the simple idea of crafting a perfectly bold cup of coffee. Inspired by wellness and countless pots of stale coffee while deployed, we wanted to craft a bold, clean, and smooth coffee. So we did. And we realized we wanted to share this coffee with our friends. Lord knows we could all use a good cup of coffee right about now. From the farm to your coffee cup, there's nothing like a good, well-crafted, and bold cup of coffee. No matter what time of the day, it's there to pick you up, motivate you, and relax you. We hope you enjoy our coffee. Be bold, be humble, be Kevlar. And you can find Kevlar Joe's Coffee Company anytime you want at www.kevlarjoe.com. Enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, and when you just look through, like, I touched on it earlier, you had the transhuman movement. Well, then that, like you said, that nothing good comes out of that. You have Skynet and Terminator showing you that. You have Jurassic Park showing you how it ain't going to wind up good when you start playing God and start bringing things back that he purposefully took out of this world. And you just see all these different things coming into play. But then I look back, like we talked about, antediluvian times and the chimeric creatures. And then a lot of people now are theorizing that Sasquatch, Dogman, Mothman, all these things, they theorize that these could quite possibly be, government test subjects and experiments that have gotten loose.
So great point to bring that up, because if you go back during Stalin's time in Russia, you actually had documents that you can go back and find that show that he was trying to take ape semen and impregnate human women to have a soldier who would be strong, because a chimpanzee is 6 times stronger than an adult male, right? You take an ape and you get the strength of that ape, but you have it so it's a little bit smarter. It can follow orders, but it'll run through a brick wall for you, be 10 times stronger. It'll be a super soldier. So this stuff has been attempted throughout history. And I'm sorry if that happened in Russia, it was probably happening in other places too. And maybe to this day still happening. We don't know. But the idea of the chimeric things, you can talk about one of the ones Napoleon Dynamite made famous was the liger, right? Do you remember the liger? It's a real thing. If you had, and I can't remember which one's the male or the female, but I think it's like a male tiger or male lion and a female tiger made a liger, and then vice versa made a tigon. But a liger gets 10 times, or not 10 times. It gets like, I can't remember how, when they had it stand up and these people are standing, it's like 12 feet tall when it stands up on its back legs. It's gigantic, way bigger than either a lion or a tiger. It's an abomination. It's a mutant. It's something that God didn't intend. But you see this stuff all the time, over and over and over
Yeah,
again.
and Hollywood always shows their hand, because even with DARPA, the super soldiers, look at Captain America. That's
Yeah.
exactly what he was.
But what do? They paint it in a positive light, right? Captain America, the movies are great. It's entertaining. Like Chris Evans, great actor, right? Awesome, whatever.
The Incredible Hulk.
But the thing is, when you do this and you take that, I feel like we're fed certain things to soften us up, because at some point, everything, if you go back and look at old movies, it kind of seems to always come back into, it comes to fruition, 20, 30 years down the road, you see it. So, in the last 10, 15 years, how many alien movies have come out? How many, movies along those lines, things like that. You go back to Jurassic Park with the genetic manipulation. I think that I truly do believe we're looking at the future, that they get you ready for it. They soften you up. The blow is coming. It's just, once again, my opinion, but you see these things come true very often later on. And what was I can't remember who the guy was that said it, but he goes, today's science fiction is tomorrow's science fact.
Nothing new under
and
the
I
sun.
thought that was
Solomon.
Yeah, that's true.
And even L.A. Marzulli, I had him on the Prometheus Lens the other day, and he was talking about his UFO film series, and the Roswell series, and he even talked about the cattle mutilations. And he's saying that it's funny how all the mutilations that you're having, with this UFO phenomenon, it's all animals that are genetically compatible with the blood types of humans. How bulls and pigs, the blood can be used in human transfusions. And even some of these body parts, how they're just genetically, they can line up and link with human DNA. And he's theorizing in his movies that people like Karen Wilkerson and they're these people that are claiming to be abducted and saying that they've been impregnated and going to the doctor, and it's being proven that they're pregnant, and then months later the baby's gone. Just a few months later the baby's gone, and there's no signs of a miscarriage or anything. It's just like, oh, it was a false positive or something. And he's saying that it's his theory that these entities are coming down, and it's Genesis 6 all over again. It's the modern day Nephilim. It's a hybrid race of beings, and that you can't just have a woman get pregnant and go to the hospital and deliver these Nephilim / alien babies. That ain't gonna fly. So you get them pregnant, remove them from the womb, and he's theorizing that they're taking these parts and this blood from these bulls and different animals, and creating artificial wombs, and they're putting these babies in these created artificial wombs and growing them in a lab, just like this 80-year-old man was doing with the sheep.
That I've never heard that before. That is very disturbing if that ends up being true.
And think about it. I mean, there's people they've even done heart transplants and stuff with pigs and stuff, haven't they? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, not heart transplants, but they'll use the valves. They'll use different things, either a cow or a pig.
The valve, yeah, okay.
Actually, so yeah, it's interesting. And that's the thing. I think this is important, and it's important topics, because some people will look at this, and a lot of Christians will look at it and go, "Oh, aliens," or "Oh, this." Oh, it's we live in a world where this is a very big subject. I mean, you have that show, Ancient Aliens, that we've talked about before, that has been on. Alberino was on it, right? That have so many people push in that direction to try to say, okay, we were created, but it wasn't by a God. We don't really have any responsibility to them. But we're seeing this stuff being pushed on us and pushed on us and pushed on us more and more, to the point where we are, we're when they show up, we won't be surprised. And it's one of those things that it's just another lie from the devil. This is just another lie from the devil. These things of the alien showing up, or all these different things that we're being fed, it's just to soften us up so that we are not that surprised when something comes along, just like we said about Jurassic Park, just like we said about AI with Skynet. This stuff is not gonna, it's put out there to it's almost like it's a big psyop, just to test you, just to see how would the American public think this. Oh, Jurassic Park would be awesome. Guess what? We can make Jurassic Park. We're going to start, though, with the mammal. We'll do a woolly mammoth and then see what's next. Really, there probably already other stuff out there, let's be honest. But, we're at that point. It's just
well, it's kind of like how husbands do with our wives. You know what I mean? It's like, it's date night, and you're supposed to go out, but you've had a long day at work and you're tired, man. You'd like to stay home, and you've already kind of planned, like, man, yeah, there's a game on tonight. I think I'll watch that. So what do? You put your feelers out. You're like, hey, babe, man, I think we should just stay home tonight. What do you think? And then you're like, okay, how's she gonna react? If she's like, okay, cool, you're like, oh, yeah, that's great. And if she's like, hey, I know you're kidding. Oh, yeah, baby, I was just joking. That was a joke. I was laughing, you remember? You do things sometimes to get your feelers out and see what you can get away with, Ladies, I'm kidding. I just made all that up. I broke guy code right there.
Important thing.
Forgive me, fellas.
Is we have to look at these things in our society, things like aliens, and understand that this stuff is all around us all the time. As a Christian church, you can't just stick your head in a hole and say, well, that stuff isn't happening. Nothing's here. Nothing's there. When there's thousands of people that have I have seen something in the sky that I can't explain. I've seen that. I can't tell you what it was. I can't tell you what it's from. Was it probably some crazy government thing? Probably, but I can't tell you. So you go through these things. We see this stuff all around us. You cannot bury your head in the sand, and you can't deny that people aren't seeing things. You can say the same thing about Bigfoot, for example. Like you said, there's thousands of sightings. Somebody's seeing a 8-foot hairy guy in the woods. I have a hard time believing that many people are hoaxing something. Does that mean that there's just it's Gigantopithecus, some, ancient ape species that's still on the loose? I don't know. Is it a government experiment? I don't know. But the thing is that there's some reality. It's just like those chimeric creatures. There's a bit of truth in every myth, right? It starts with a story, and over time, the telephone game, when, especially with oral tradition, things change a little bit. It goes a little farther. It goes a little further, and maybe things change, to where somebody was super hairy guy, and later they said he was 8 foot tall. And he's a Bigfoot. I don't know, but I'm just saying there is always some truth at the base of every myth.
Oh, and I definitely agree. Here's a little side fact, Paul Blart fun fact for everybody. I'm working on that book, and the Epic of Esau, and he was the hairy wild man. And I bought this book. It's actually really good. His name's Nick Redfern, I believe, called the Wild Man, and he talks about just wild man stories and mythos and stuff like that from Britain, because that's where he's from. And he's got a story in there about several stories about the wild men, but he's got this section in there where he says that he says that I'm not saying that every instance of the wild man can be explained by this scenario, but maybe some can. Doesn't mean it's every single one. But he talked about Wolfman syndrome, and there's a professional name for it. It's like hypo something stasis or something like that. But the layman term is Wolfman syndrome, and people are born covered in hair from head to toe. And he's got several people historically documented as such, and these people were put in circus sideshows, as the bearded lady, and different things like this, the wolf man. And the ones that weren't, sadly, especially like in medieval times, you have this hairy goat demon looking thing. You think it's, devil seed, demonic seed, or abomination. Well, what do? You don't want everybody to know that you had this abomination. You take it out in the woods and just throw it, for the beasts to kill it or to freeze to death or whatever. But another thing he talked about was, in certain cases, it's been scientifically proven that anorexia, in certain cases, can cause people to grow fine hair all over their body. And it's described as so fine that it's often described as fur. And what happens is how your body's made to survive. That fat, is your body's insulation. Not only is it an alternative fuel source, it also, keeps you warm in the wintertime. And so when you go into starvation mode, your body produces this fine hair when you're in cold circumstances as a defense to fight the cold. So it said in medieval times, when people were mentally ill or thieves or whatever, they were outcasts. They were pushed out of society and out of the towns, and they were forced to live in the woods like wildlings. And he said, well, look at homeless people today. There's strength in numbers. When you get a group of homeless people in an area, what do? They form together and form little communities to look out for each other. Well, of course, they're a little community. And if they're going through this and they start growing all this wild hair, well, then they start breeding. Well, then they get these two dominant genes that reproduce in their children, and it's even stronger. He said, a lot of these wild man stories, you see these wild men of the field and women covered in hair head to toe. And a lot of the stories that they're coming in and stealing livestock stealing food and grain, taking girls and raping them. And there's been many stories that they would take a teenage girl and that she'd disappear for a while, but then she would come back. But when she came back, she delivered this hairy, beast. Even remember, we talked to Heather Arnold. She was talking about the myths that were just like that in the Solomon Islands, that these hairy giants would come in and steal these teenage girls and breed with them, and they would have these hairy giants and stuff. So it's like we have all kinds of strange phenomena going around us, which sometimes can be answered with scientific lingo, but it's just this world is definitely a lot stranger and more complex than we like to make it sometimes.
Just to add on to what you're saying, that domesticated pigs, if they're released, or if they escape and they get into the wild, they actually within 2 weeks start growing longer hair on their whole body and actually start growing tusks as well. So those things are changes that only change in that pig if it is now in the wild versus in domestication. And that doesn't even have to be because it's cold or whatever. It just is a change based on more the change in what the pig has to forage more. There's more of a need to live, a forced way to it's that desire that we all have in life that we need to keep moving on. And when that happens with a pig, it starts covered in fur. And that's why right now in this country, wild pigs are actually one of the biggest nuisance animals there are. But we also have Eurasian boars. And now those cross, and the mutants of those, if you've ever seen that, they'll have these things that are 800 pounds that people shoot out in the woods that are these wild pigs, but they're crosses. And it's the mutant thing kind of all over again. They kill these things they're mutant crosses of these domesticated pigs and some of the Eurasian boars.
Yeah, that's just in nature. So imagine when people start playing God and messing with these things.
But just like a Eurasian boar is not native here, it was brought over by some of the settlers. And what they did, instead of feeding them, they released them because they knew they procreated so fast. They'd have them to be able to hunt them where they were. Then obviously they procreate, they go crazy, which we see around this country. I mean, in Florida, wild hogs are a nuisance, and they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Like I lived in.
You're not talking about the biker gang of old men that ride their Harleys, like the movie, right? Wild hogs.
No,
oh, okay.
Not those ones.
They got more hair.
And a little bit more, but I'm telling you, but they were everywhere. I'd see them in our subdivision. I mean, that's how bad they are. They just destroy everything. They root everything up. But you have those wild hogs all over the place. Mm. So, you've heard the term breed like rabbits. The pigs aren't much different. So there's a lot of them, and they grow fast, and they get really, really, really big. Mm. So,
well, guys, like we said, this is kind of off the hip. We just wanted to talk about that, and we saw that and thought it was fascinating and thought it was worth bringing to your attention. It was definitely some strange news, and it tied into the book of Enoch and the Bible and some of the things that we like to talk about. So we definitely just wanted to have a little short discussion with you. But be on the lookout for strange news, man.
And as always,
keep digging.
We thank you for listening to the Dig Bible Podcast. Questions, comments, or future episode ideas? We'd love to hear from you at the dig423@gmail.com. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to share, subscribe, and check out our Facebook group at the Dig Podcast. Remember, you can't lean on a shovel and pray for a hole. You gotta dig.